know it's this. It's like a perk in the talk of this shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a belly to sing on my head. Look up better put on the road I just went. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. Here we present you different world stories and adaptations. This is the second part of What If Saitama Enters Dragon Ball God's Arena. Smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. The caped Baldy did nothing but watch as the Saiyan Prince retreated in his pod. Sure, he could have easily stopped the pod while it was midair, but he didn't think it was really worth the trouble. He'd let Sonic escape, even though he knew he was an assassin, and nothing bad had really come of it. What was the worst that could happen? But what perplexed him was how the smaller Saiyan or whatever they called themselves let the bald comrade behind. I mean, these two were like partners. What kind of partner leaves the other partner behind with nothing? No way to go anywhere, no way to contact him, and no energy to even stand. That wasn't cool in Saitama's book. That was fucking weak. Saitama nonchalantly and lazily walked over to the bald Saiyan. Nappa was a complete mess. His armor was cracked, completely torn in every spot that Saitama had hit with his consecutive normal punches. His tail was crushed under the weight of the many rocks scattered all over his body. Barely conscious enough to register Saitama's presence, he stared contemptibly into Saitama's eyes. So what now? Are you going to kill me? Torture me? Nappa's chest tightened up on him and he began to cough up blood. Saitama's consecutive normal punches had done a number on his lungs and ribcage. Simply inhaling was enough to make Nappa wince in pain. Saitama shrugged. I'm not into that kind of stuff. Sounds gruesome. Not really my kind of style. Although the Hero Association might not be so happy about what your tiny friend did to City D. You weren't all that bad. If I had to rank you, you'd probably be around the 3rd to 5th strongest guy I've come up against. I mean, sure, you weren't hard to beat, but at least you got me out of the house for the day. There hasn't been anything good on the movie channels these past few days, and I've spent most of my time just flipping through the channels without finding anything remotely substantial. Bastard. This was all Nappa said before he passed out from overwhelming pain and exhaustion. Dude, you still with me? Saitama poked Nappa's head and chest like a child to see if he was still conscious, but sadly enough, Nappa was out cold. Was he dead? He put his fingers on the vein of Nappa's throat. There was a slow but steady pulse. Looks like it's your lucky day. Well, that depends on how you look at it, but at least you're not dead. A bright beam of light emanating from the rising sun shone in Saitama, much to his annoyance. What gives? Lying alone on a small rock was Nappa's scouter, completely intact and undamaged. Saitama picked up the scouter in mild fascination. He had never seen anything so plaid yet so cool looking. From what he could make from its design, it just seemed to be a pair of really big red sunglasses cut in half. That was cool enough in his book. Fidgeting and playing with the scouter like a child with a toy truck, he latched the scouter onto his ear. The scouter had features one would not have expected on such a device, such as interior cushioning that made the scouter feel comfortable. Cool feature. Wish I had headphones as comfortable as this thing, said Saitama to no one in particular. Saitama slapped his forehead with the palm of his hand. He had completely forgotten about Genos. Knowing that Genos had taken a pretty big hit from Nappa's breaker cannon, Saitama jogged over to Genos at a medium pace. Next to the unconscious cyborg were Speedo Sound Sonic and 3 other guys who he had absolutely no knowledge of. All 5 of them were beaten mercilessly, with Sonic and Lightning Max's injuries being the most grave. They took a real doozy. A faint buzzing filled Saitama's ears. Not this time. Saitama slapped both his ears with rigorous force from his hands, believing that the noise was coming from more mosquitoes coming in to ruin his day. To his confusion, no tiny bugs fell on the ground. Saitama scratched his head like a monkey trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle. As the sound was getting closer, he realized the sound was repeating in a spinning type motion. Whirring in the air were 5 small droids all circling around Genos. Hey, get off of him. Saitama swatted one of the droids away, effectively destroying it, and was about to do the same to the other 4 when Genos' eyes were relighted. Genos, in a daze from his forced shutdown, it took him a few moments to register everything around him. As his internal visual scopes readjusted, he saw the vast, barren, and demolished landscape. He smiled when he saw his master hovering over him. So what are these annoying things? Saitama blurted out the comment, interrupting Genos' analysis on his master's worried expression. As I have stated before, my parts are easily replaceable due to my cybernetic body. However, my internal hard drive is stored deep within the center of my cranium. What now? My head. The codes harbored inside my internal hard drive contain my thoughts, my emotions, personality, and all my memories of my life before the destruction of my hometown. In a way, that hard drive is effectively me. Anyway, these drones were designed by the good Dr. Cusino for the sole purpose of retrieving my cranium and any other parts that are still intact. Their sleek appearance and multitude had been slightly off-putting, but now that Genos explained it, he realized that there were no weapons, that they were more for reconnaissance or recovery than for offensive purposes, and he dismissed them. The teenage cyborg turned to the drones and waved them off. Return to the laboratory. Tell Dr. Cusino I am simply in need of a systems reboot and energy core replenishment. The drones blinked and shook up and down and flew off into the sky. That was a real mouthful, said Saitama, the veins on his forehead marginally throbbing and his teeth clenched to some degree. My apologies, Master. Saitama waved his hand in dismissal. It's fine. Wait, Master. Did you defeat the 2 dragon-level beings? Asked Genos, even though he knew the answer to the question. Oh yay. They turned into some really weird monkeys. They went on about something called Blutz waves that are emitted from the moon and how they were able to create their own waves. Normally Saitama wouldn't have given 2 shits about long-ass explanations, but his gut told him that these 2 weren't just any normal mysterious beings, or at least normal by earthly standards, and mentally remembered as much as he could, believing the information could be important for later. This statement surprised Genos. So you're saying that these 2 warriors were able to go in and out of this transformation at will? Saitama nodded. It also made them a lot stronger, but they lost a ton of speed when they changed. The smaller guy shot a really small white ball into the air, and then they changed into huge apes. The smaller one put up a better fight than the big guy, but neither of them had any power to back up their talk. Saitama sighed. It was pretty disappointing. Anyway, I managed to knock out the bigger guy with my consecutive normal punches, and I think I broke the other guy's nose. I guessed that the orb was responsible for keeping them as apes, so I figured if the orb was gone, they would go back to normal, and I was right. The smaller guy, I think Vegeta was his name, got in a small pod to escape. The bigger guy tried to ask him for help, but he just left him behind. He's lying unconscious over there. Saitama pointed to where Nappa was lying. Are you sure it was a wise decision to leave them alive? Both were dragon-level threats who effortlessly defeated 3 A-class heroes, the other warrior. Oh yeah, that guy was that Speedo sound guy. He's about as powerful you are. So why didn't you finish them off like any other mysterious being? Well, I mean, he shrugged his shoulders. I just wasn't comfortable with killing him. I don't like killing people, and this guy was a decent fighter, so I figured what the hell. The caped Baldy turned his attention back to the other 4 unconscious fighters. So what do we do about the other guys who got their asses whooped? The cyborg sternly gazed at the 4 other unconscious fighters. Their wounds ran deep from the fight they were just in, and from what his processors could analyze from the severity of the wounds, it would take them quite some time to recover. If they were lucky, they would be up and running in about a week or 2, and worst case scenario, all 4 would be out of commission for 2 months. I believe the Hero Association will send some scouts to retrieve the unconscious heroes and re-imprison Speedo Sound Sonic once again. Although if I were the Hero Association, given his uncanny speed and impressive assassin skills, I'm assuming they would put them in a much more secure and fortified cell much deeper underground to ensure his imprisonment. Master, what are you wearing? Saitama took off Nappa's scouter and looked at it in fascination, still fixated on its unique design. Those 2 had these things on them. Here, take a look. Saitama handed the device to his disciple. To what purpose did they use this device? I dunno, although the smaller guy had one too. But it blew up for some reason when he looked at me with it. Really? The device was destroyed when it looked at Master Saitama. That still wasn't enough information to tell him what its purpose was. He would need to discuss with Dr. Cusino its purpose. Master, would you accompany me to the lab with Dr. Cusino? This was a first for Saitama. He'd always wondered where it was that Genos was repaired every time he was broken, and for his heightened senses and awareness, he'd been pretty stupid not to notice the mini drones before. At least today he would have that question answered. Sure, here we are, Master. The demon cyborg and his master stood at the door of the doctor's laboratory. Some great minds think alike, as the laboratory was hidden deep within the lush, vast forest between the City X and City Y, somewhat similar to Dr. Genos' lab. Within this laboratory contained Dr. Cusino's most prized works throughout the many years of his work. Dr. Cusino was widely known throughout the scientific world, and in public, he resided in City Y. He often attended important meetings within the community. But unlike many, Dr. Cusino preferred his privacy, and hid his private laboratory deep underground. Genos knew firsthand how powerful and effective his robotics was. They were even more dangerous and powerful than the workings of the two greatest scientists known to man, Child Emperor and Metal Knight. Is this really where this guy lives? Genos shook his head. The great doctor lives in a small apartment inside City Y during the weekdays. He spends most of his time working publicly, working on his lesser, more menial projects. His weekends are spent in his private workshop, either helping rebuild me or focusing his efforts on his other important projects. Let us enter. From the stone wall popped out a jet black keyboard. Genos typed a 12-digit code with lightning-fast fingers. At first, nothing happened. A few seconds later, the wall gradually opened to the two heroes. What the? Yes, the doctor was very thorough in the concealment. Genos nudged the dumbstruck B-class hero forward into the tightly concealed lab. The entrance led to a very dimly lit hallway with small light bulbs hanging overhead. At the end of the hallway, a long flight of stairs motioned the two heroes downward. Robot parts were everywhere. Everything was in a disarray of spare parts, papers, and boxes of takeout lunch for the nights when a good night's sleep wasn't on his mind. The walls were a dull gray, and the floor was covered with several panels, with some being only a foot or two long, and others being as big as 10 feet. On the doctor's right was a large table with at least a dozen or more computer monitors were running numbers, speedily calculating the exact parameters, sustainability, and other coding required for his projects. With several Dr. Cusinos left was some sort of operating table with at least 8 mechanical arms hovering just a few feet above. That table is where the doctor installs my upgrades and rebuilds my limbs, said Genos, practically reading Saitama's mind. The doctor was typing rigorously on his multi-screen desktop that stood to the right of the large operating table. Didn't he hear us coming in? Genos shook his head. When he's caught up in his work, he has laser-like focus. When he first found me, he didn't sleep for 3 days straight. Saitama smirked. He seemed to be just as determined in his work as Saitama was during his training. Dr. Cusino. He quickly turned his head, alarmed that someone had intruded his secret laboratory. But he sighed a breath of relief when he saw it was only Genos. Ah, hello Genos. How are you? I am fine, doctor. Is the operating table ready for the reboot? Yes, I just finished the last code encryption. Dr. Cusino noticed the odd and ridiculous-looking person standing right behind Genos. He quizzically stared at Saitama. And who might this be? This is my master, Saitama. Dr. Cusino shot a look of disbelief and awe at Genos. This is the master. Saitama felt an uncomfortable chill rush through his spine as Dr. Cusino began circling around Saitama like a predator stalking its prey. The smell of takeout food and the sensation of him breathing down his neck only made the sensation more awkward. Taking it a step further, he changed levels. So you are the person who has saved Genos on several occasions and have taken him on as your disciple. Saitama could do nothing but nod his head, still feeling like the doctor was trying to kill him with only his eyes. He hesitantly met the eyes of the doctor who was now standing right in front of him. The tense air completely lightened when Dr. Cusino let out a warm and hearty laugh. Oh, I must thank you for all the help you've been to Genos. Placing his arm on Saitama's right shoulder, his eyes softened, conveying the deep-seated appreciation he felt. If it wasn't for you, Genos would have been done for sure, and I don't know what I would do. He forced himself to blink back tears. All I can say is that I'm extremely grateful for all you've done for Genos. Ooh, sure, no problem. A sweat drop fell down Saitama's face in an anime-style fashion. Realizing Saitama was getting uncomfortable, the doctor cleared his throat and turned his attention back to Genos. So Genos, shall we begin your system's reboot? Yes, if we may. But before we do, I would like you to take a look at this device. He opened up a compartment on the right side of his waist and showed Dr. Cusino the device. What is it? It was some sort of contraption that the two dragon-level beings had on their eyes, like a monocle. One of them self-destructed when it was aimed toward Master, so it would be best not to turn the device on while Master Saitama is in close range. Understood. Dr. Cusino examined the scouter in the same manner as Saitama did, turning it and staring at it with a childlike fashion. I'll focus on that later. Right now you need to rest on the table before your energy core can receive any more damage. Yes, doctor. The teenage cyborg obeyed the doctor and sat on the platform. He restrained himself with the iron cuffs connected to the table as he had done more times than he could count. Let's begin then. All 6 monitors on the desktop went bright blue as Dr. Cusino began typing on his keyboard. Several different folders began popping up on each screen, and the doctor selected the folder titled Energy Core Repair. Genos, just so you remember, your internal core will be shut down so there are no altercations in the reboot. I remember, doctor. When his body was returned to the doctor after his fight with Mosquito Girl, he had to have an internal core repair. He remembered it feeling similar to when he was sleeping, as if he was in a dark, dreamlike state where nothing but a dark void lay ahead. But that wasn't what was on Genos' mind at the moment. Genos had spent enough time with Saitama to effectively notice all his master's facial expressions and little idiosyncrasies, or even his, such as when the dark lamb chops he liked was $1 more than the week before. When the television company took off 5 of the movie channels from the monthly package, or the most grievous event was when he left the oven on overnight with a bowl of pasta, ruining the pasta and consequentially, the pot. The face of despair on his master's face was unbearable, and it was something that Genos could never forget. Yet he distinctly remembered the face his master had when the large fighter's beam overcame his incineration cannon. He quickly glimpsed to his master who was already jumping up toward him, and there was something in his eyes that he had rarely if not ever seen from his master. It was exactly the same look that he had seen when his master saw him lying seemingly dead on the ground. The nominal but still present look of distress when Genos was seemingly deceased. But what could cause his master such worry? The wires and gears in his cranium clicked. His pensive thoughts were interrupted, and he fell into a peaceful sleep. Saitama was standing mouth agape. Dr. Kusino was typing like a madman, programming the robotic arms standing still on the ceiling for the energy core operation. One of the robotic arms dropped down and scanned Genos' entire body to check for any burn marks or broken limbs. The blue light turned a bright red, and the beams focused on a large burn mark on his right leg, exposing several large wires running through his body. Wait, I thought you said you were just replacing his energy core. The doctor let out a hearty laugh, leaving Saitama only more confused. Ah, Saitama, if you know Genos, you'd see he takes great pride in his strength. When you were walking with Genos, didn't you notice he had a slight limp? Oh yeah. Now that you mention it, he was running a little bit slower than usual, and his walking pace was more erratic. The doctor nodded. Ever since he became your disciple, he's shown great disappointment whenever he fails an assignment. You should have seen how distraught he was the time when he didn't make it to a time sale. He must have been talking about it for at least an hour. Oh yeah, we had sukiyaki that night. Genos really saved dinner with that entree. Haven't had anything that good in a while. Dr. Kusino smiled. That's Genos for you. Even as a boy, he was always striving to be the best he could be. Even when he was equipped with prototype models still in progress, he would always sneak out of the lab and practice using his mechanical parts. A dedicated boy, he is. Let me ask you, how has he been? Saitama shrugged his shoulders. He's fine. He's pretty high up in the Hero Association. This was no surprise to the doctor. Dr. Kusino secretly kept track of all mysterious beings eliminated by Genos, and was always checking the Hero Association website to make sure he was aware of Genos' ranking in the Hero Association. No, I mean his general mood. Has he ever mentioned to you the robot that destroyed his town? Saitama's face hardened to a more serious and somber expression. Yes, he told me his life story when he asked me to be his disciple. The doctor sighed. It was quite a tragedy. When I found him, he was just barely breathing. All of his limbs were fractured, his insides decimated beyond repair. A pool of blood encompassed him, and his eyes were red and swollen from all the tears he shed for his lost family. I immediately brought him back to my secret laboratory. It took over a week for me to create the technology I had only conceived of on paper, and another 2 weeks for me to download the contents of Genos' brain into an internal hard drive. I didn't sleep for a single minute. Keeping Genos' human body alive was hard enough, but getting the equipment and resources needed was nearly impossible. When I look back, I'm still surprised how I managed to save him in such a short amount of time. By the 3rd week, Genos' body was complete. When he woke up, he was in a state of bewilderment and disorientation. I told him my name and how I made his body robotic, and he remained silent. But the heart-wrenching pain of losing his family was too much, and he eventually cried once I finished explaining the situation, bawling on the floor like an infant. I comforted him and let him mourn his loss. The doctor closed his eyes and chalked back a sob. Anyway, after he got acquainted with the situation, he begged for me to make him into a cyborg of justice, and eventually I accepted. I equipped some pyrokinetic weaponry and more offensive armaments, then began to teach him how to use his robotic parts to the best of my abilities. It was challenging at first, but over time, he learned that his pyrokinetic abilities were nothing more than an extension of his new, more durable body. For the most part, the early years of his new life were spent in the laboratory, running tests, and training him to hone his abilities and call upon them as quickly as a man might blink. On occasion, I would allow him to explore the surrounding area, and on some afternoons, let him roam free in the woods. But it was only at the age of 18 that I was confident enough he had mastered his new body and allowed him to fight evil. You've helped Genos a lot to calm down the fury boiled within him, to ease the temper of rage against villainous beings and realize not everything is black and white. And that is more important for Genos than any upgraded parts. Saitama stood silent. He had reached his breaking limit and he was about to bark at the doctor to shorten the story. But the doctor stopped just as he was about to open his mouth. He then proceeded to respond to the doctor's comment. His temper now gone. I haven't done anything. Genos learned these lessons for himself. I was just there. You still guided him to that path, and I'm eternally grateful for that, no matter what you might argue. Saitama smirked at the doctor's persistent attitude of thanking him. That was one thing he and Genos apparently had in common. The two stood for a while and watched as Genos' repairs begun. The blue blur of the small spacecraft flew through the empty, star-filled void of space. Housed inside was a disgraced, forsaken, shattered prince, the destined ruler of the most powerful race in existence, who defeated countless hordes of enemy soldiers and annihilated each planet's most powerful warriors within an inch of their life. And while it wasn't a particular pride to admit it, one of Lord Frieza's most powerful warriors. The Saiyan prince had his eyes closed and his head down, his face buried against his knees in complete shame. He had been absolutely decimated, destroyed, taken out even in his ultimate form, the Uzaru, the most powerful conceivable transformation used by the Saiyan race, next to the legendary Super Saiyan. He had been defeated by a bald idiot with the worst sense of clothing he had ever seen. Someone like Vegeta, a warrior who held the glory, legacy, and lifeblood of the Saiyan race, a prince who could topple planets at the age of a toddler, who was destined to become the Super Saiyan of legends, ousted by a simpleton like that. But there was one single thing that was overshadowing his defeat more than he cared to admit. A single factor that only made his loss all the more devastating, more heart-wrenching, more demoralizing than any other defeat in his life: the bastard's sedate face. Nearly every second he was fighting with him, he mocked him with his stoic attitude, his expressionless demeanor, and his elementary combat style. He took no defensive stances, displayed no advanced fighting style, and showed absolutely no seriousness in battle. But for him, technique and defensive stances were completely irrelevant, since he had his godlike power that more than compensated for his subpar fighting knowledge. No, for him, the Prince of Saiyans wasn't even worth the effort of getting out of bed. And to add insult to this monumental injury, Saitama didn't even finish the job and let him escape, even though Vegeta knew full well he could have done so. He had escaped on a long shot in the hopes that he'd catch him off guard and narrowly leave by the skim of his nose. But when he looked down, he saw Saitama staring right at him, not even exasperating the effort to intercept him. After 10 minutes in space, the feeling of humiliation and disgrace began to truly sink in, and he wished he had been killed and been spared this torment. At that moment, his pride had completely vanished, along with his fighting spirit, leaving nothing left but a hollow soul, overwhelmed with nothing but shame. And to make matters even worse than they already were, if that was even possible, he had to give a mission report to Frieza. Knowing Zarbon and Dodoria, it would only take about an hour for every soldier on the ship to know of his failure, and only a week for the entire Frieza force to deem him a laughingstock. He had about a week until he reached Frieza's ship, so that would give him plenty of time to find the words least likely to make him sound like an incompetent stooge. The prince pinched the bridge of his nose. This could not be happening. Well, Genos, your repairs are all finished. Genos' internal hard drive sparked back to life, and Genos' eyes fluttered open. He lifted his head and saw his master standing cross-armed right beside Dr. Cusino, still finishing the final upload into the young cyborg's internal processors. Good. Master, did you enjoy yourself? Saitama shrugged his shoulders. The lab looks pretty cool, and I got to eat a few leftover fortune cookies from the doctor's Chinese takeout. Very good to hear, Master. You really need to be more careful, Genos. Dr. Cusino barged into the conversation, rather dismayed. I've often let you off the hook for your injuries, but today was the worst I've ever seen. Your energy core was already consuming your reserve power, barely operational, with several cracks breaking the outer frame. Had you arrived a few minutes later, the damage to your core could have been irreversible. Genos bowed his head in shame. I am sorry, Doctor. I will attempt to be more careful in battle. The doctor stared at Genos, then ran his hands through his hair. What am I going to do with you? So are we all good here? Asked Saitama, more than ready to leave. Yes, Master. We can head to the supermarket and prepare for dinner. Actually, I think I have a better idea. The doctor walked over to his desk, which was a disarray of papers and unfinished project plans. After about 20 seconds of searching through the horde of mess, he finally found a small piece of paper and what appeared to be a menu, to which he gave to Saitama. There's the address to the Chinese restaurant I always order takeout from. I'll place in a phone call and order whatever you heart desires. Saitama stared with wide eyes at the doctor, then at the piece of paper, then back at the doctor. I recognize the address. This is my favorite restaurant. I've only been there twice, once on my 16th birthday, and the other 4 years ago. They've been the best dinners of my life. Are you sure about this? Dr. Kusino waved his hands in dismissal. It's fine. Enjoy yourself with a nice restaurant dinner. Order anything you would like. Both the doctor and Genos were taken aback when Saitama began to jump in the air and pumped his fist with energy Genos rarely saw from him. Dr. Kusino was even more surprised when Saitama grabbed his hand and clasped it with both of his hands. Oh, thank you so much, doctor. It's been years since I could go get food like this, much less without me having to pay. I really appreciate this. An anime-style sweat drop fell down Dr. Kusino's face. Ew, you're very welcome. Unsure of how to respond, he simply returned the handshake. Saitama then opened the menu and began to search through the appetizers, entrees, and beverages, anything that looked appealing to him. I think some chow mein would be nice, but those spring rolls do look pretty tasty. Oh, but that kung pao chicken is making my mouth water just thinking about it. As Saitama continued to voraciously take in all the options he could, Dr. Kusino slowly trudged over to Genos. Is he often like this? Genos shook his head. He has a rather low income, so delicacies such as this are a rare treat that he takes with open arms. I see. Dr. Kusino nodded. This man is truly a rare hero. Genos craned his head to Dr. Kusino. Yes indeed. Man, this is such bullcrap. Metal Bat and Child Emperor had just been called by the Hero Association to rescue the VERYYYY-class heroes that had just been sent to deal with some new dragon-level threat. And literally right before he could show his cat the new toy he'd bought him at a pet store. Relax, Metal Bat, said Child Emperor. Hey, you relax. I thought that when I was common here, I'd at least get the courtesy of getting a good fight out of it. But all I find are VERYYYY-class bums, some ninjutsu weirdo, and a bald guy passed out cold. Fuck. Metal Bat slammed the ground with his indestructible bat, shaking the terrain below him and creating a tiny crater in the process. Child Emperor pinched the bridge of his nose. Just try and entertain yourself. Metal Bat stared at Child Emperor with cold eyes, then trudged off with a huff. There doesn't appear to be any remaining threats. Although, the 10-year-old hero walked over to the passed-out bald man with his mechanical tentacle arms. Could this man have been the mysterious being that caused all this damage? But that didn't make any sense. He'd fought several mysterious beings since he'd quit being Metal Knight's assistant. But he'd never seen a mysterious being so human in appearance yet was able to take out VERYYYY-class heroes. Just what the hell was he? Miles away, from the original crash site of the Saiyan pods, another strange vessel shot out of the sky and landed on the ground with a thud. The unknown craft suddenly shot open, revealing one of Metal Knight's reconnaissance drones. He had working in his lab, still attempting to replicate the structural material from the extraterrestrial spacecraft to incorporate in his missiles, when his monitors suddenly blared to life. He was shocked when it revealed two small objects approaching Earth's surface. From what his data processors told him, the objects were much too small to be meteors like the dragon-level meteorite, yet they were going at nearly 5 times the speed of said meteorite, possibly even faster. But the sole factor that confirmed its alien origin was that the unidentified objects began to slow down once it reached the troposphere. It was then he knew he had to go to the crash site. The knowledge that some sort of object could go at this unparalleled speed and it could possibly be a space pod of some sorts made him ecstatic. But as if it couldn't get any more surprising, the Hero Association announced that City C had been utterly decimated by some unknown mysterious beings. It was the exact location where his data processors had calculated the unknown objects would land. Once he arrived at the scene, he was in awe at the sheer magnitude of the destruction. It was rather uncommon to see beings capable of such devastation. Had I been in charge of creating the city, the damage would have been non-existent. A shame, really. Bofoi surveyed the area to see if he could find anything in this barren crater. No apparent signs of life. All of a sudden, his sensors picked up a small object at the center of this wide abyss. Bofoi commanded the sentry to sprint to the bottom of the crevice. He gasped. At the bottom of this gargantuan hole was a white spherical space pod, appearing no more than 5 feet in diameter. It had a very sleek design, with a small, circular red window being the only other noticeable exterior feature. He found it hard to believe that such a small and unimpressive-looking spacecraft could be capable of such flight. He peered through the red window. On the inside of this spacecraft was a single seat outfitted with a rectangular control pad hinged to the pod's hatch. Surrounding its interior was a sort of white cushioning. This was a rare specimen indeed. While yes, the alien shipwreck certainly was a valuable and intrinsic specimen, this was the first piece of alien technology left completely unscathed. If he could somehow replicate the technology that made this craft go at such high velocity, he could incorporate that technology into his own, and he would create the most powerful weapons mankind had ever seen. Bofway smiled. All right, I must make sure no soul interferes with this research. The gray-haired scientist picked up his telephone. Randall Valentine, a young 20-year-old man with jet black hair and small peach fuzz, was drinking his morning coffee and reading his weekly Playboy in his office when his telephone suddenly blared at him, nearly knocking him out of his chair. He scrambled from his chair and rapidly picked up the phone. Yes, sir. Call the Hero Association. Explicitly tell them to make sure the media stay away from my laboratory. I can't stand any more news reporters crowding at the door of my laboratory. Of course, sir. Get to it. Randall hung up the phone. He ran his hands through his hair. When he signed up to be the secretary of the world-famous scientific hero Metal Knight, he'd expected to see awesome robots, chicks swarming him knowing he was connected to an S-class hero, and all the respect he could ever want. He wished he could go back in time and slap himself in the face for thinking it would be a good idea. Just before he was about to call the Hero Association, his mind turned back to the Playboy he was reading. A perverse thought crossed his mind. Wonder if Blizzard of Hell could pose in one of these. That would really make a night to remember. That was delicious. Saitama and Genos had just finished dining on their gourmet Chinese cuisine. Saitama would have to remember to thank Dr. Cusino again for buying dinner for him. The bill had been almost 15,000 yen. Not only that, but he had enough leftovers to last for the entire week. It was like a dream come true. Was it to your liking, master? It was awesome. That Kung Pao chicken set my mouth on fire, but in a better way than I thought. Saitama grabbed his cup and took a sip of his Fanta. And if it couldn't get any better, that restaurant was chained with Coca-Cola, so I got me a nice cold Fanta. I mean, Pepsi products aren't terrible, but I've always been a Coke kinda guy. Genos smiled. I'm glad to see you enjoyed your night. Yo Genos, can you hand me some of that soy sauce? Genos nodded and handed him a soy sauce packet. The hero ripped open the packet and then poured all of the soy sauce straight into his mouth. WOAH. That's a rush. Took me a few years to do that without gagging. I once threw up after eating 5 packets in a row. Those were the days. Saitama reclined in his seat, staring at the ceiling with a smile on his face. This had been a good day indeed. Totally worth getting up in the morning. The attack ball soared through the void of space. The stars were simply lit in the cold reach of space, and inside the attack ball, it was only more bleak and lifeless. 1 week had passed since Vegeta had left Earth, and he was still having trouble finding out how he wouldn't sound like an idiot. He'd had to deal with the reek of sweat in his own blood inside his capsule for hours on end. He would have gone into hypersleep, but he found that the face of that bald-headed bastard plagued his dreams every day. The worst part was that he didn't even get a power boost from his defeat. A Saiyan only became stronger when put in a near-death state, but all he'd done is got punched in the face, which wasn't nearly enough physical damage to receive a power boost. Even better, he hadn't washed himself, so dried blood was smeared all over his face. Shit. Vegeta had set the coordinates of his ship to find Frieza's ship, and his control board began go off the fritz. He looked up, and realized he was only a few thousand kilometers away from Frieza planet 419. Frieza must have stopped to refuel his ship, and the memory of Barrow's defeat brought him back to this backwater planet. Vegeta stiffed up. He knew from the violent turbulence that he was already entering the planet's atmosphere. He almost retched, but doing so in such a confined space would make this even worse than it already was, if that was even possible. 500 meters until Frieza's ship voiced his control board. The attack ball began to nominally slow down as it reached the boarding deck. He crouched up from his slumped position to look down, and he grimaced. Apule and Kui were waiting at the boarding deck. Both of them had stupid smirks on their faces and their arms were crossed. They must have already figured out that something went wrong on the mission from there being only one pod. Fuck. Vegeta slammed his armrests. Those slimy bastards were going to eat this up. The space pod hurtled toward the port and bounced safely on the cushioned landing sites designed to absorb the shock from the pod's impact. The attack ball's hatch door sprung open, revealing to Apule and Kui a Saiyan prince with a bloody face and a space pod that smelled like it had been drenched in sweat. Oh Vegeta, you smell like your mother after taking 10 guys at the same time. Sounds like your last Saturday night. Oh Kui, you don't want to upset the big bad Saiyan prince. He might transform and start flinging his shit at you. Both soldiers laughed their heads off. Vegeta smirked. At least my mother and I got some. The only chance you two'd ever get laid is if you crawl up a chicken's ass and waited. The two alien soldiers bared their teeth. "Why, you little? That's enough out of you three." All three of their eyes widened. Apule and Kiwi swiftly turned around and shuddered when they saw Frieza perched on his hover chair, with his two lackeys standing by his side, smiling at the palpable terror in their eyes. All three immediately bent to their knees and placed their fist over their heart. "Our apologies, Lord Frieza. Save that energy for when I'm bored." Some of your derogatory comments were mildly entertaining. Frieza began to move his eyes around, as if looking for the piece missing in the picture. "Vegeta, where is that nefarious oaf Nappa? I pray that he wasn't delayed in his return. I should hope your mission went along swimmingly." Vegeta hunched his shoulders at Frieza's question. As much as Vegeta wanted to rip Frieza's vocal cords so he could permanently silence his condescending voice, Vegeta knew he couldn't lay so much as a finger on him. He took a deep breath and prepared for the worst. The mission did not go as planned. Dodoria snickered. "Judging by the blood on his face, I'd say the not as planned part means the whole thing went south." The Saiyan Prince shot a look of pure contempt at Dodoria, but continued to keep his mouth shut. Frieza raised his eyebrow. "Is what Dodoria says possibly correct?" "Ew." Vegeta cleared his throat. "Nappa was defeated and detained by one of the warriors on planet Earth." "Nappa defeated," said Frieza, rather surprised and nominally concerned that Nappa was beaten. Not that he cared about him. Personally, he would have preferred Raditz over Nappa any day, but Nappa was still a rather powerful member of the Frieza force in comparison to his foot soldiers, and without powerful generals or soldiers at his disposal, conquering planets would become much more arduous. How was he disposed of and who disposed him? A fighter on planet Earth, a being that wore ludicrous clothing and had a bald head, even though he couldn't have been more than 30 years old. The scouter read he had a power level of what? Frieza jumped out of his hover chair and grabbed Vegeta's collar. "Stop muttering vague nonsense and use your brain, however small it may be. Answer the question." Vegeta gulped. It was. Everyone gasped. "There's no way. That's impossible. Nobody could be that powerful. Your scouter must have been malfunctioning. Attaining such a power was unfeasible, unthinkable, and impossible." At least that's what Frieza's henchmen were thinking. All of them stared at Frieza, praying he take this news calmly. Frieza froze. It took him a moment to absorb what he'd just been told. A being of such power other than him. It couldn't be true. Yet what reason did Prince Vegeta have to lie? He thought he was finished with warriors of legend threatening his empire. He truthfully believed he could take a refreshing sigh of relief and relax. Now suddenly, a random warrior shows up on a miserable-looking mud ball, kills Burrows, thrashes the last remaining Saiyans to a pulp, and has a power level of. The Space Emperor snarled, and released a purple energy wave that just narrowly missed Vegeta's neck and singed the top of his hair. Vegeta clenched his teeth when he saw the top of his hair fall on the ground. Zarbon was the first to speak. "Lord Frieza, you can't seriously believe the tall tales of a simian fool like this." "Yes, my lord. This can't possibly be true." Frieza took Zarbon and Dodoria's words into consideration. He took a deep breath and exhaled through his nose. "Whether or not this reading was correct, the evidence is standing before us. Whoever this fighter was, he was powerful to defeat Prince Vegeta and Nappa." "Vegeta, did you undergo your filthy ape transformation in battle?" Vegeta craned his head up to Lord Frieza. Through gritted teeth, he spoke the words he loathed hearing. "Yes, both Nappa and I transformed into great apes, and both of us were defeated in an instant." Frieza began stroking his imaginary beard. "I know firsthand of the significant power increase that occurs when Saiyans undergo this transformation. Whoever this fighter is, I was clearly wrong for sending two dirt-covered lackeys alone to combat him. I must take more drastic measures." Both Zarbon and Dodoria looked at each other, unsure of what Frieza was talking about. "What exactly do you mean, my lord?" Frieza walked to the edge of the platform, staring out into the empty void of space. "My empire has no boundaries. My destiny is to reign supreme over every dominion in the universe and even beyond, and no planet will escape my grasp. I cannot let this warrior get away with this scotch-free. No one humiliates the name of the Galactic Frieza army without my say in it. Everyone knows and will know my name and tremble in terror when they see even a glimpse of my power. And that means everyone. I will confront this warrior myself. If he's smart enough, he will come to realize the futility of resistance and bow to my whim, granting me another extremely useful warrior to add to my arsenal of fighters." Frieza twisted his lips. "But if he is foolish, then he will have to grasp the consequences of his short-sighted decision and tomfoolery, and I will disillusion him of his feeling of superiority." His bold, courageous facade will crumble away, replaced by the trepidation and realization of how helpless he truly is. At that moment, he will truly come to terms with the concept of fear, all the while beginning his slow journey to the pits of hell. Frieza let out his malignant laugh, which rang out through the entire compound. Vegeta, I must inquire. Besides the fighter who you were defeated by, were there any other substantially adequate warriors you encountered? Many of the planet's heroes, as they called themselves, could barely hold their own against the Saibamen. The only exceptions were a sneaky ninja who used toys to try and defeat us, and a blonde young man with the bearings of a cybernetic robot who was able to match Nappa's ultimate attack. I see. Frieza dwelled on this. More acceptable candidates to pledge into his army, a treat he always embraced happily. Very well. Zarbon, Dodoria. Both henchmen straightened themselves. Yes, my lord. Prepare my ship for departure. I will meet this warrior myself. Of course. Oh, and QE. Yes, sir. Contact Frieza Planet 245. Tell them to send me the most advanced scouter their scientists have created and to have them sent to my ship at once. Have the delivery be handled by the Ginyu Force themselves. Everyone gasped. The Ginyu Force. Oh, my lord. Surely the situation has not become so dire that we require their assistance, said Zarbon. The testimony of a battered Saiyan prince who lost his comrade and has a face filled with blood, babbling on about a warrior with a power level of surely isn't the kind of conundrum that would require their attention. The Space Emperor leaned back and looked up to the sky. Call it personal intuition, but I believe their services would be most useful to us at the moment. It's been quite some time since they've had an entertaining field mission. Surely this planet's inhabitants will make sporting game. And besides, I'm feeling in a rather jovial mood, even with this unfortunate news. Dodoria, Zarbon, and Vegeta will come to Earth as well, along with 200 henchmen. Both men bowed and scurried off to obey their master's orders. And as for you, Frieza pointed his finger at Vegeta, and for a second, Vegeta thought his life might end at that moment. Be fortunate that I do not cut off your tail right now for your contemptible results on your mission. Now go to the healing chamber before your scent makes me vomit. We leave in 5 hours. Vegeta bowed and quickly began to pace away. Dodoria smirked as Vegeta walked away. Nice one, your majesty. Vegeta paused in his place and growled at him, but he knew he was in no position to start a fight, and walked out without saying another word. Frieza walked back to his hover chair and resumed staring out into the cosmos, and smiled maliciously once again. The game is set, the die is cast, and my besiege will begin. Millions of miles away, the caped Baldy and Demon Cyborg were enjoying a good night's sleep, and the crack of sunlight was entering through Saitama's apartment windows. I'd like some syrup with my toast please, and make it snappy. Saitama was muttering to himself in his sleep, enjoying his abnormal dream, when something loud and annoying came knocking at his doorstep. Is this the residence of Demon Cyborg? I need to speak with you immediately. Saitama groggily rubbed his eyes, extremely upset that his beauty sleep was being interrupted like this. He opened the door and saw a man with a suit, looking out of breath. Saitama frowned, unpleased with this random stranger at his door. Dude, if you want to sell insurance, I don't have the money for it, so just skedaddle. The man furrowed his brows. Hey, I know you. You're the caped Baldy. What are you doing in Demon Cyborg's apartment? If you did anything to him, I swear I'll tell President Agoni and have you kicked out of the hero ass. Leave my master alone. In less than a second, Genos was standing in between Saitama and this unknown intruder, with anger flaring through his eyes. State your purpose. My deepest apologies, Demon Cyborg. I thought the caped Baldy was threatening you. Anyway, I've been sent by Minister Sich and President Agoni to summon all S-class heroes for another meeting. Both seemed rather serious about this meeting. Another meeting. How peculiar. Master, like before, you should come as well. This is a meeting for S-class heroes only. I doubt that your company is needed or wanted by his voice faltered when he saw Genos' eyes darken, his expression much more grave and threatening. He stammered for several seconds before speaking again. But of course, any guest of Demon Cyborg will surely be welcome to attend such a meeting. It starts in 30 minutes. The man then quickly scurried off like a field mouse, scared shitless of what the Demon Cyborg could do to him. Genos turned to his master. So shall we prepare to go, master? Saitama waved his hands in dismissal. Nice offer, but I think I'll pass. It's too early for me to listen to some boring crap, and if I go now, my sleep schedule is gonna be all messed up. I'll get a few more hours of shut-eye. You go without me. Saitama slowly walked over and plopped himself straight onto his blankets. Genos propped against the wall, concerned about what he had just heard. Whatever threat was coming, he had a feeling it would be a threat that of which humanity has never seen, and he was sure without a doubt that they would need Master Saitama to fight it. Genos and some of the other S-Class heroes were each patiently waiting, with some of them noting the behaviors of the other S-Class heroes who weren't as patient. "How come we have to come to this boring place again?" said an irritated Tatsumaki. "We were already gathered a few weeks ago, why do we have to come back here again?" "Just calm yourself, Tornado," said Bang. She glared at him, then simply huffed like the spoiled, inconsiderate bitch she was. Finally, Metal Bat and Metal Knight, or at least one of Metal Knight's drones, entered the room. "Sorry I'm late everybody. I had to drop my sister off at her piano lesson. Unfortunately for me, I was forced to accommodate my busy schedule to attend this tedious meeting." "Well, unlike us, you don't have to haul your ass hundreds of miles here and can send one of your helper droids to go for you," said a frustrated Metal Bat. "I'm sorry, you're a tad too annoying for me to bear with this morning." Metal Bat jumped up from his seat. "Oh yay, I dare you to tell me that face to face, then we'll see if you have the balls to say that again." "Stop." Everyone turned their heads and saw President Agoni and Minister Sitch, both of them looking tired and both appearing very distressed. "Now is not the time for such brash actions. We have much bigger problems than your petty squabbles." "But, stand down," yelled Sitch, absolutely unwilling to hear more nonsensical argumentative garbage from any other heroes. He tightened the grip on his bat, but grudgingly did what he was told and sat down. "So where the hell is Blast? Why isn't he here?" Sitch sighed and put his fingers to his temple. "Unfortunately, we were unable to locate him, so he will not be joining us today." Again. Now, let's get down to the task at hand. Yesterday morning, one of our staff members informed us of a secret letter hidden in the closet of Madame Shibabawa. Some of the more ill-mannered heroes groaned. "This again. We came here at 7:30 in the morning just so we could hear this again. I wish. This was much, much worse. The letter was addressed to both me and President Agoni at that exact date, at the exact time." The heroes looked at each other in confusion and concern. What's even more alerting is that it even lists every hero present at this moment at the exact date and time. Everyone gasped. How could that be? Sitch typed a few codes onto the monitor, and up came a holographic image of the letter. It appears that this letter was a continuation of her last words she said just before her death. The letter goes like this: President Agoni and Minister Sitch, when you hear of this message, it will be at 3:32 in the afternoon, and it will be conveyed by a young man named Baxter Johnson with blonde hair. To President Agoni, Minister Sitch, the S-Class heroes Tornado of Terror, Silver Fang, Atomic Samurai, Child Emperor, Metal Knight, King, Zombieman, Thrive Knight, Pig God, Super Alloy Darkshine, Watchdog Man, Flashy Flash, Demon Cyborg, Tank Top Master, Metal Bat, and Puri Puri Prisoner. Metal Bat and Metal Knight will be the last to arrive, in that order. You will receive this message at 7:43 a.m. on September 27, 2015. Heed this warning. The Earth is in terrible danger. A simian's downfall will ripple through space. To a demon of unspeakable terror, the devil of frost shall reap and sow seeds of malevolent destruction. The poison of vainglory, a two-sided coin, to lead the trail of unity or division. The demon's wrath quelled through pain, and the desolate wastelands returned to life. Everyone remained in an awe-stricken silence. This was so complicated, so convoluted, and each of them was in a conundrum for what it could mean. Wait, doesn't simian mean monkey? How the hell can a monkey from outer space have a downfall? Said an unconvinced Tatsumaki. Our data analysts have been attempting to match up these phrases and see if there was any correlation. But so far we've turned up no successful results, replied Sitch. If some of you are not aware, two mysterious beings appeared yesterday in an unknown extraterrestrial spacecraft. At exactly 2:34 p.m. yesterday, these two pods touched Earth's surface, and whatever creature was in there was powerful enough to level City C from the face of the Earth. At 3:14 p.m., one of the space pods left Earth with one of the mysterious beings, yet for some reason, the other remained on Earth. We're currently unsure of why this was the case, but Metal Knight has taken possession of the remaining spacecraft. We're still unclear as to who defeated these two dragon-level threats or the details of their defeat, as the three A-class heroes are still in an unconscious state. Not only that, but we've deduced that one of the mysterious beings and a dangerous assassin who had escaped custody were two of the 5 people remaining at the scene. What was the name of the dangerous assassin? Everyone turned in surprise when they realized that Flashy Flash was asked the question. For a stern, often uninterested S-Class hero such as himself, it was rare for him to ever speak without a tone of rudeness in his voice. I believe he calls himself Speedo Sound Sonic. Why does it matter to you? Flashy Flash sighed in exasperation. No reason you should concern yourselves with, he said with aggression, meaning he was back to his old self. An uncomfortable mood swept the table. None of them had ever seen him raise his voice. Ever. Well, anyway, if any of you have any information about these mysterious beings, anything would be greatly appreciated. I was the one who defeated them, said Genos. While on the outside he kept his expressionless facade, the intense debate was broiling within him. More than anything, Genos would have loved to say that Master Saitama had been the one to eliminate the threat. But he knew very well that many people did not hold Saitama in high regards, claiming him to be a conniving, credit-stealing con artist. He knew that there would be a day everyone would see the truly noble man Saitama was, but for now, he would respect Master Saitama's wishes and make him anonymous. Demon Cyborg, you are the one who defeated those two. Genos sighed. Yes, very good. The rest of you may leave. Remember to stay vigilant, and if you find out any strange activity, please report to either myself of the Hero Association as soon as possible. Demon Cyborg, we will call you in a few hours to ask for details. In the meantime, I have some more personal business to attend to. Dismissed. The S-Class heroes immediately jumped from their seats as soon as Sitch finished talking. Getting another hour or two of sleep was on most of their minds at that moment in time. Yet as Genos was about to exit the door, he saw a message through his optical sensor, and Genos stepped back. Genos, we need to talk. Now, Dr. Cusino. Genos placed his palm to his forehead. What was the problem now? Genos scurried down the steps to Dr. Cusino's basement. Dr. Cusino, I came as soon as I saw your message. What is the urgent issue? Dr. Cusino was pacing back and forth through his laboratory. His usually calm complex was now replaced with a jittery, disordered sack of flesh. He was wringing his hands, and his eyes now had several more lines etched into his skin. This is unbelievable. I don't know how this can be. How can this technology exist? Doctor, Genos sped to Dr. Cusino. You need to calm down. The young cyborg planted both of his hands on the doctor's shoulders and stared right into the fear-ridden doctor's eyes. Dr. Cusino, take a deep breath and calmly explain to me what it is you discovered. The doctor did as Genos told him, closing his eyes as he inhaled and exhaled. You're right, Genos. I apologize, but it's just that I've discovered some very troubling news about the scouter you gave me. Come. The doctor motioned Genos over to his work table. Genos observed in curiosity at the several different wires connected to the scouter, which all looped to several computer monitors that were performing some calculations that Genos could vaguely recognize. Whatever sort of technology was used to create this scouter, it's unlike anything I've ever seen before. After you left, I turned it on to begin my analysis, and I was unable to read the language on the device. It took me some time, but I was able to replicate the numerical system and language of the scouter and download it onto my hard drive. The amount of information and programming coded into the device was equal to 5 terabytes of storage. Such a large amount of storage in such a small device on its own is unprecedented. It took me almost 4 hours for me to download the entirety of the language text into my data system and replace it with our English language. It will still take a few days for me to translate the language into English, if that's even possible. As you know, I integrated sensors into your retinal system to detect high energy levels, but those measurements are very imprecise and can only read energy levels as high or low. But this scouter is something which I've never seen before. I took your advice and decided against using it on your master, so I scouted for the energy levels of the closest city to my lab. And I was shocked. Not only was the scouter able to give a concrete reading of every different citizen, but it was able to estimate the exact distance between my laboratory and the city. Genos picked up the scouter and stared at it in awe. Whoever had the capability of creating such an advanced sensory device has knowledge that is years, maybe even decades ahead of our current technology. But Genos had stopped listening to the doctor about 10 seconds ago. A single overriding thought was going through his brain. If this device was as powerful as Dr. Cusino said it was, then could he perhaps? Doctor, do you think that you could perhaps integrate this scouter into my sensory system? The good doctor dwelled on this for a moment. If he could figure out how to duplicate the technology, it could be theoretically possible. But, Genos, this technology is very advanced, far too advanced to replicate in a single night. It would take me days, maybe even weeks for me to replicate this kind of technology. Genos, I have to know something. Dr. Cusino turned to Genos, and while he gave no palpable signs of anger, Genos could feel a kind of serious chill radiating off of the doctor, and he slightly tensed. Was there any other machinery or equipment that the mysterious beings brought with them? Where is the spacecraft that they used to travel to Earth? Genos ran his hand through his hair. At the moment, one of the space pods is in the custody of Metal Knight, an S-Class Rank 6 member of the Hero Association. Dr. Cusino looked at Genos as if he had misheard him. "Do you mean Bafoy?" said Dr. Cusino with a tone that almost sounded like worry. Genos tilted his head, somewhat baffled that the doctor sounded concerned when he spoke. Yes, doctor. How did you know his real name, and why do you sound so uneasy about it?" He figured that he might be familiar with his hero name, but it was much less common for people to know his real name or any high-ranking hero's real name for the matter, so how did the doctor know? "Oh, no reason at all." The doctor stretched his arms out, palms out, as he chuckled nervously. "I just know about him due to his high status in the Hero Association and his achievements in the scientific community." Although his explanation sounded reasonable enough, something didn't sit right with the way Dr. Cusino had sounded just now. It struck Genos as if he was trying to cover up something he knew about Bafoy. Was there some sort of connection between him and the S-Class hero he wasn't telling him? "Doctor, have you met Boff?" His pocket suddenly began ringing. Who could this be? He grabbed his phone and saw that the caller ID was from the Hero Association. "Yes, what is the matter?" "Demon Cyborg. The Hero Association is ready to question you about the mysterious beings." "Very well. Tell Minister Sitch I will arrive in 20 minutes. He hung up the phone without saying another word. "I must go now, doctor. Forgive my short visit, but I must answer some questions for the Hero Association." The doctor waved his hand in dismissal. He more than anyone knew that Genos' work was very important, and he'd already told him everything he needed to tell your fine Genos. "Just make sure to be careful. Something tells me that something big is about to happen." The demon cyborg somberly nodded. "Yes, farewell, doctor." The good doctor watched as Genos sprinted out of his laboratory. "That child is still as rambunctious as ever." The old man chuckled. "Some things never change." He then walked to an unidentified room. He clicked on the keypad next to the door, and the door quickly whooshed open, revealing a bathroom. Dr. Cusino felt like his clothes were glued to his body, and he thought that hot water would help wake him up. Besides, he had somewhere important to go, and he wouldn't smell like a dead skunk in front of him. "This is just great. This is just great." The Saiyan Prince was gently floating in the healing ooze, but he knew that 1,000 years in this liquid wouldn't heal his broken pride or grow his trimmed hair. That glorified lizard had cut off about the top 2 inches of hair. The worst part was he couldn't even grow it back because a Saiyan's hair stopped growing as soon as they reached adolescence. God, he'd had some bad hair days when he was a kid, that's for sure. Damn it, damn it, damn it. The young Prince Vegeta was losing his mind, pacing around his training room and trying to figure out what he would do. It had been a regular training day, and he was relentlessly plowing through dozens of Saibamen like the paper-thin trolls they were, when one of them caught him off guard and scorched the right side of his hair. Any other day, he would have been pissed, but it would have been fixable over time. But today was his coronation into his title as Prince Vegeta. He was only 4 years old, about to become 5, and already such a prestigious honor was being held for him. Everyone would deem him a laughingstock if he appeared at the ceremony with hair like this. It wasn't like there was a barber around to suddenly fix his problem. Hell, over half of the Frieza force was fucking bald. I am so screwed. Prince Vegeta, your ceremony starts in 45 minutes. General Nappa was patiently sitting next to the door to Prince Vegeta's personal training room. But Vegeta's babbling piqued his interest. He should have been out of his room 10 minutes ago, so why was he still inside the training room? Are you alright, Prince Vegeta? Mind your own fucking business, Nappa. I quote him fine. Nappa narrowed his eyes. Alright, that did it. Vegeta, just what the hell is taking you so? Well, if his eyes were working right, he was looking at Prince Vegeta with a face as ripe as a tomato and his hair singed on his right side. What happened to you? Vegeta slapped his palms to his forehead and groaned. God, this was humiliating beyond words. One of the Saibamen got a lucky shot at me and it clipped my hair. Nappa, what the fuck am I gonna do? Alright Prince, just calm down. Calm down. I have 40 minutes until I have to show myself in front of the entire Saiyan race, and you want me to calm down. Vegeta slammed the wall to vent his anger, causing the entire room to shake. General Nappa sighed in exasperation. If King Vegeta saw his son looking like this, he would surely be blamed for this. What could he do? Wait. Prince Vegeta was snapped out of his paranoid and frantic mood when he felt General Nappa grab his arm. Nappa, what the hell are you doing? Vegeta tried to break free and stamped his feet into the ground to halt Nappa's movement. But his resistance was pointless. While he was relatively powerful, there was still a difference of at least 1,000 between Nappa's power and his own. Maybe even more. After flying rapidly down the hallway for about 20 seconds, where thank Kami no soldier was there to see him, they stopped at a room where Vegeta had never entered before. As soon as they entered the room, Nappa locked the door. He then grabbed his scouter and pointed it at Vegeta. When he heard a faint clicking sound come from the scouter, he froze in his place. Nappa, what did you? It's just a precaution, just to make sure you don't tell a living soul what I'm about to tell you. Tell what? Nappa groaned. Was he really going to do this? He pinched the bridge of his nose and closed his eyes to ease the frustration he was feeling at that moment. When I was in my 20s, I was. Nappa opened his eyes to see Vegeta tapping his foot, impatiently waiting for an answer. I was a barber, all right. For a second, the room stayed quiet. Nappa covered his eyes with his right hand so he wouldn't see Vegeta's smug face. About 5 seconds passed, and still nothing. Maybe Prince Vegeta wasn't so. And as if on cue, a chorus of uncontrollable laughter came from Vegeta. General Nappa, one of the most powerful Saiyan generals and his father's top advisor, was a fucking barber. He knew that barbers existed, but such a menial position was an occupation for the low-class Saiyans, and there were only rare occasions in which he or any other Saiyan ever even needed something as arbitrary as a haircut. The irony and lunacy of General Nappa having such a random and ridiculous occupation was too much for the prince to take in, and he fell on the floor in an uncontrollable laughing fit. His eyes were actually starting to water from the sheer hilarity. The Saiyan general's embarrassment only grew watching Vegeta rolling on the floor and hearing his incessant laughing. After about 30 seconds, his annoying laughter started to wane and he started to take deep breaths. So, why did you become a barber? Said Vegeta through giddy giggling. He never thought that he'd be regaling this story to an actual person, but he guessed since Prince Vegeta already knew, he might as well tell him everything. Nappa sat on his bed and rested his hands on his lap. Back in the day, it wasn't easy living on a foot soldier's salary. Hell, there were nights where I went hungry because I didn't have the money to pay for dinner. Anyway, I had to find a way to earn some cash until I moved up in the ranks and could afford a better place. So one day, while I was scourging through the streets and stores for any help wanted posters or job listings, I found a secret entrance in one of the bars, which revealed a hidden barber shop which was occupied by a few Saiyans with scissors. They threatened to kick me out, but seeing as I was desperate, I asked them if they were hiring. I don't know what kind of god was watching over me that day, but for whatever reason, the owner of the shop took me on as a student, showed me the proper cutting techniques, and taught me how to talk nice to the customers so they would give me more tip money. So I worked in that underground shop, where I trimmed the hair of any Saiyan soldier who'd pay and didn't want to see any of their comrades with their bad hair. The place I worked even had a special gel that regrew any Saiyan's hair. Wait, so you're saying you have a gel that can regrow my hair back? Well, come on, give it to me. Nappa sighed. I don't have it. The Saiyan prince grimaced at Nappa's words. Well then why the hell did you bring me here? Nappa grazed through his cabinet drawer next to his bed, and found a pair of scissors covered with a layer of dust. I think I might be able to even out your hair, and if anyone has the gall to ask, you could just say you wanted to have a change of look for your ceremony. That way you won't look like an idiot in front of your own coronation ceremony, and I won't have my head served on a platter. Are you in or not? What other choice do I have? Let's go. Vegeta sprinted for the bathroom door and seated himself. While I'm young Nappa. Right. Sweat bullets began to rain down on Nappa's face. It had been almost 10 years since he'd used these rusty things. Oh well. He tried to remember everything he learned 30 years ago and began. When Vegeta felt Nappa's thick fingers combing through his hair, he shuddered. Such a close range of distance with Nappa fondling through his hair was such an unnatural feeling. This was by far the most awkward thing he had ever experienced in his life. He'd take this to his grave, and he bet Nappa would too. Bored out of his mind, Vegeta looked at the clock and began to click his thumbs together to match the rhythm of the ticking clock. After 200 ticks, Vegeta started to envy the dead Saiyaman. He felt as bored as a blind man watching a movie. After clicking his thumbs 500 times, he reached his breaking point. Can you hurry up with? It's done. See for yourself. Vegeta swatted Nappa's hands out of his hair. It's about time. If you did anything bad to my hair, I swear I will. His voice fell flat when he saw himself in the mirror. It looked good. His flaming, jet black tipped hair was even more rigid and edged. The rounded hole created from the Kai blast vanished, as if it had never happened. He was speechless. If anything, it actually looked better than his original hairstyle. Wow. Thank why? The prince shook his head vigorously. What the hell was he saying? Was he actually about to lower himself by thanking him? Did Nappa put some sort of chemical in his brain while he was cutting his hair? Thank God you didn't mess up, or else I would have stabbed your eyes out with your scissors. Nappa chuckled. You'd never get the chance, you little punk. Nappa clicked the keypad and both doors burst open. Now come on, let's go before both of us get it. If Vegeta could, he would have slapped himself for conjuring up such a nonsensical and frivolous memory. He'd learned not to hold on to such menial memories like this through his time under Frieza. That lesson, combined with the countless missions he went on, helped him cope with the untimely death of his fellow Saiyans. He heard a sharp ding, and the relaxing sensation tingling all over his body quickly faded. He opened his eyes and saw two scientists standing over the controller pad. Prince Vegeta, how are you feeling? The prince snapped at the scientists, detesting the idea of creating small talk to such lowly maintenance workers like these. None of your business how I'm feeling. The agitated prince pointed at the door. Now leave me be. The scientists gathered their coats and shoved each other through the door like feral animals fighting for their fresh meat. He rubbed his temples and thought about what he should do until he left for Earth again. What would he do for the next 4 hours? Well, around 1 he always went to the bar and got wasted. Come on Nappa, let's. There he went again. This was the second time his mind had dwelled on that useless reprobate and memories of him. He'd remembered the times where they would steal Frieza's private stash of wine and gorge themselves on whatever other alcohol the bartender carried. What the hell was getting into him? His mind was too detached and erratic to think clearly right now, and at that moment he wanted to keep it that way. And what better way than to binge drink like his life depended on it? Who needs that overgrown toad anyway? Certainly not me. Sich had actually managed to pull it off. He had been assigned by the Hero Association to be the leader of the Prophecy Emergency Countermeasure Task Force, which was a responsibility he did not take lightly. Right now, there were perhaps a few hundred, possibly 1,000 criminals gathered in one place for this underground meeting. I would like to thank all of you for coming to this underground meeting and responding to our call. Many of you have high bounties on your head and are ranked high on the Hero Association's wanted list. And yet, you have come here with absolutely no hesitation because you believe you will not be apprehended and arrested for your crimes. Let me assure you this has nothing to do with your criminal records or your business in the underground market. This is not any sort of elaborate trap, so we can talk freely. That being said, let's make sure we don't do any funny business. Standing to my right are 3 A-class heroes. The 3 A-class heroes, Heavy Tank Loincloth, Blue Fire, and Magic Trick Man were being looked upon with venomous stares. Murmurs spread through the group of criminals. Do not mind them, they are simply bodyguards. However, these A-class heroes have abilities that rival S-class, so it would be unwise to do anything foolhardy. What was Sich thinking? Said Blue Fire. All the most wanted contract killers, weapons manufacturers, mad scientists, and escaped convicts are gathered in one place. Magic Trick Man nodded. There's no way these thugs will agree to assist us. I don't know exactly why these criminals were called here, said Heavy Tank Loincloth. But with all of these highly wanted fugitives in one place, that means. Blue Fire finished Loincloth's thought. If a single one of them tries to pull a fast one on us, I'll burn them to a crisp. Same here, said Magic Trick Man. I'm not letting this opportunity to conduct a huge act of justice slip away. As soon as this meeting's over, I'm going for it. All 3 heroes nodded in synchronization. Let's begin. Please take a look at the handout I'm about to give you. Sich walked to the side of the podium and gently handed the 3 A-class heroes the handouts. The heroes looked at their superior with incredulity. We're not paper boys, said Blue Fire. Please just do it. I can't stand up to any of these criminals by myself, and your strength is at that of an S-class hero, so they shouldn't be a real threat to you. The 3 heroes groaned and did what they were told. As they passed the papers down, all of the criminals stared straight into the heroes' eyes with pure defiance, but most of them were smart enough to know they were hopeless against these heroes, so they simply took the papers and said nothing. Sich cleared his throat. As you can see, the amount of disasters above tiger level has been rising at an abnormal rate. This month alone was 6 times higher than the average of the past 3 years. A slide projected above him, showing a graph and a few different images of mysterious beings of each category, excluding God, as the world was lucky enough not to have such a monumental disaster just yet. If you are not aware of Madame Shibabawa, she was a prophet who would assist the Hero Association. And a week ago, we found her final prophecy, which was specified to us at an exact day at the exact time. Shocked murmurs spread throughout the room. Another slide appeared above Sich. It was the prophecy, word for word. Sich and Agoni had had a very long conversation about whether or not they should reveal the full extent of the prophecy to such hoodlums. This information was extremely sensitive, for it could decide the very fate of humanity. And to allow these criminals to know such information was like shouting out to the entire world. Hey everybody, the world might be ending. Apparently, there's this space demon that's gonna come to Earth that not even S-class heroes can beat. But please remain calm and don't do anything stupid. But they didn't have a choice. Despite the amazing strengths of some of the S-class heroes, especially Tatsumaki, there was simply no way for all of these heroes to handle the increased number of monsters, and if they couldn't beat this demonic threat, then nobody could. So the only other way to stop this was to replace quality with quantity, and that was where these thugs fit into the picture. The S-class heroes already have their hands full handling the current disasters, so in order to protect humanity from the imminent threat that is coming our way, the Hero Association would like to. Sitch pinched his eyes closed. He couldn't believe he was about to say this. Every fiber in his body wanted to puke when he said this, but he had no choice. We would like to enlist your help in our battle against these monsters. Everyone stood in silence. However, Blue Fire took this news the worst. The veins on his face were popping, and his eyes were quickly reddening. Then, the anger came bursting out of him like a raging inferno. You seek help from these criminals. Is this really the association's decision? The minister slammed his fist on the podium. Yes, there now stands a wall in front of us that cannot be broken down unless all of humanity joins together to knock it down. The slide switched over, showing a map of several different human icons, meant to show the number of heroes in all 26 cities. Right now, there are 390 degrees Celsius class heroes, 101 B class heroes, 38 A class heroes, and only 17 S class heroes. That's nowhere near enough to fend off against the hundreds of monsters appearing every year. The Hero Association is not acknowledging your criminal acts, but it's undeniable that some of you have abilities that rival the heroes. However, the association is not so gullible as to believe you would do this for free. The next slide appeared, which caused the criminals to gasp and lick their lips with greed. For every monster you defeat, you will be rewarded. Your reward will vary based on the level of the monster you defeated. As you would expect, the higher the threat, the more money you will get. Now, depending on how many of you need to defeat a monster, the bounty will decrease. So defeating a dragon-level threat single-handedly would get the greatest compensation. Heavy Tank Loincloth jeered. Sure, let it be, but it's a complete waste of money. When the time comes, they'll all be useless. Yo Pops, I can't let that insult slip. One of the criminals who was hit-headed and foolish enough to talk back to heroes more powerful than himself pulled a knife out to loincloth. He wore a regular pair of jeans and a striped jacket, with spiky orange hair to go along with this oddly normal attire. He had a wicked smile that showed no remorse, and his eyes were like gateways that led to an empty room, filled with nothing but barbarous instincts to maim and kill. In terms of killing, you couldn't even come close to matching my level of experience. You want to try it out, see if I'm wrong. In a flash, the punkish criminal was barreled 5 feet into the ground. Loincloth spat at the low-life trash. They follow no beliefs. Both Blue Fire and Sitch stared at Loincloth with blank faces. But the scale of the oncoming disaster. Well. The prophecy hit the big one. The big one. Everyone in the room turned their attention to the unknown stranger in the crowd. The criminal had a tight black long-sleeved shirt with white and loose white pants, with a yellow cloth belt tied around his waist. He had long silver hair that spiked upward into 2 large spikes. He had a wicked smile, similar to the criminal who was now buried in cement, and yellow eyes that shone in the dimly lit room. Now is that prophet fucking amazing or what? She can even foresee a disaster-level god. Wow, oh great. Magic Trick Man slapped his forehead. All those criminals living in the dark side really do seem to have a screw loose, it seems. The white-haired fighter spoke again. Gotta admit, what the old fart said is true. Even if all of you ganged up on me, you wouldn't stand a chance. An anime-style sweat drop fell down Sitch's face. Looks like this meeting's attracted more weirdos than I bargained for. I am Garou, the man who worships monsters, and has already decimated countless dojos during his training. Garou raised his arms, like an open invitation for whatever these lowlifes could dish out at him. There's plenty of fodder here. Fodder for me to become stronger. Now let's do this. I can feel the rush. Come on, bring it on. Now that we're all gathered here in one place, we can finally find out who's really the strongest. That is why I am here. None of the criminals moved a muscle. Just stop. Sitch couldn't take more of this daffy rubbish spewing from the mouths of the evildoers. I did not gather you all here for something this farcical. Farcical? Sitch motioned Garou toward the exit. That's enough now. You may leave. That's how you treat your guests, Mr. Minister of Justice. I see. I've made up my mind. I'll punish the backwater cowards. Garou's yellow eyes were obscured, overshadowed by obsidian black evil sprouting from the excitement of battle. Time to conduct evil. Let's make this a slaughter party. Another goddamn freak. I didn't want it to come to this, but it seems like you'll have to throw him out. With pleasure, said Magic Trick Man, taking out his wand for battle. This would get bloody. No, it's Justice Man. It's that lame song again. A little boy, filled with zealous energy, eagerly waited for the climactic conclusion of his favorite cartoon. But sadly, Justice Man had just arrived to ruin everything. No, it was just getting good for the bad guy. That stupid hero Justice Man just had to come in here and ruin everything again. He was so close to world domination. Come on, Count Devil. Don't let this jerk beat you. Beat him and take over the world. Count Devil tried his hardest, but Justice Man was too powerful. In seconds, Count Devil was on the ground, marking Justice Man's 50th victory over villainy. Damn it, he lost again. Dad, will there ever be a monster that's powerful enough to beat Justice Man? The boy's father shook his head. No, Justice Man won't lose to anyone. But why? Justice always prevails, but that doesn't make any sense. The monsters are always the ones working their butts off, trying to do their best to do what they want, but they always get killed off in the end. I don't want that kind of scenario. It's not fair at all. It's boring. Monsters have ambitions too. What about the way I feel? The way I cheer them on as a fan? The monsters are always way cooler. The popular will win, the hated will lose. It's such a terrible tragedy. But that's why I won't lose. Garu grasped onto Magic Trick Man's collar. The hero hadn't even seen his movements. I will become the strongest monster in history and change this scenario, no matter what I face. Magic Trick Man. Heavy Tank Loincloth rushed to his fellow A-class hero's assistance. But Garu was faster. With a devious smirk, Garu grabbed his right arm and broke his bones. The hero screamed with pain. Deciding the hero wasn't worth the trouble, Garu struck Heavy Tank Loincloth with a very powerful right hook to his face, knocking him out in the process. An upsurge of cheering erupted from the crowd of criminals. You're the man. Give it to those bitches. Let me be your sidekick. Garu turned to the group of delinquents. Oh, don't be so quick to cheer. You're next. The cheers immediately died down and were replaced with gasps of disbelief. Wait, but why? Said one of the criminals. We're bad guys just like you. Garu sneered. Please, I'm not on your side. I'm not on the hero's side of the human side. I'm a monster, nothing more and nothing less. I couldn't agree more. Garu turned around to see Blue Fire, who was placing one of his hands in front of the other. He'd studied the special techniques of all A-class heroes, and he knew about Blue Fire's portable flamethrowers. He, for one, wasn't planning on getting cremated. Now die, monster. A long stream of fire burst from Blue Fire's hands. Garu swiftly dodged the attack, and using his superior agility and strength, instantly appeared behind Blue Fire and tore off his right arm. The pain Loincloth felt was nothing in comparison to what Blue Fire felt. He screamed, rolling on the floor and clutching the stub where his arm used to be. The criminals behind Garu, however, weren't as fast, and dozens of these nefarious hoodlums had been cremated by Blue Fire's flames, so they were groveling on the floor alongside Blue Fire. Bastard! The criminals charged at Garu, hoping that their sheer numbers could defeat this monster. But they might as well have been throwing pebbles at him, because it would have been equally effective. Garu effortlessly blew away the crooks one by one, cocking them out with a single blow. It only took about 3 minutes, 5 minutes max, for Garu to deal with all of them. Garu smiled. This is merely the beginning. Today, I declare war on the Hero Association itself. 6 months from now, I will challenge King, the strongest man on the planet, himself. I'll leave you to ponder on that, Sitch. Sitch was cowering in a corner, the shock of a human defeating all of these fighters single-handedly still fresh and ripe in his mind. Now have a good day. Garu walked out the door with a steady stride, like it was just another regular day in this not-so-regular world. Could he be the one? The Devil of Frost, Minister Sitch. Genos had just arrived on the scene to discuss with Sitch about the 2 dragon-level monsters that had arrived a week ago, when he was met with a pile of unconscious bodies of heroes and criminals alike, some cremated and one even missing his arm. What had happened? Minister, what's going on? You have no idea. Sitch shook his head. Now, let's get down to business. We have a lot to talk about. Saitama scowled in his sleep. Shortly after Genos left, Saitama ate some of the leftovers from yesterday's dinner. After heating up and eating a few delicious spring rolls, he felt an unbearable amount of sleepiness overcoming him. He guessed that going to bed at 12 in the morning and waking up at 7 wasn't exactly the best idea, so he plopped himself onto his sleeping bag and dozed off within a matter of minutes. He laid down on his back, listening to nothing but the sound of his air conditioner humming in his apartment. Suddenly, he began to feel himself slipping out of his body, like he was being ripped right out of his body. It was like as if spirit was a band-aid, and it was being ripped off of his body. Saitama attempted to break free of this spiritual grip, to escape this sensational enigma, But whatever was causing this was too strong for him, and his sleepiness was only making it worse. After several minutes, or maybe an hour, or 3 years, he couldn't tell, his sense of tiredness faded away, and he opened his eyes. As soon as he did so, he became intrigued at what he saw. All around him stretched a field of yellow daisies as far as the eye could see, with beautiful golden petals decorated on each and every one of them. However, he frowned when he looked up. Just above him was a blood-red sky that gave the setting a tone of eeriness, as if some sort of terrible apocalypse was just seconds away from destroying this entire valley. As he began turning around, he stopped dead in his tracks. Standing in front of him was a massive creature. Its entire body was covered with a layer of bones and flesh, making it appear as if it was pulled inside out. Saitama felt shudders rack his spine when he looked up at its face. There was nothing. It was as if the face was completely carved off, leaving nothing but a blank slate, devoid of any life. This didn't make any sense. Ever since he'd finished his training, he'd rarely ever displayed a sliver of the emotion he had before. But right now, he could himself literally shaking in his boots. For him, he was staring at the epitome of terror. Hello there, insect. The HQ was bustling as usual. Through hordes of phone calls, paperwork, potential lawsuits, and collateral damage fines, the staff continued to hectically work in a frenzied state. They were so busy that the 3 workers at the front desk didn't even bat an eye when an elderly man with a dome haircut came in and flashed his identification. All they could think about was getting through their overly booked schedule. The unidentified elderly man began to walk through the compound of the HQ, navigating through its complex maze of hallways like he'd worked there his whole life. After combing through corridors after corridor of doors leading him further and further underground, he finally made it to a large steel door. He reached for his front pocket and inserted a jet black card into the keypad. After about 10 seconds, the dark red light blinked light green, and the door opened for the unknown stranger. The infamous, overbearing S-Class hero Metal Knight was calmly going through the security footage, observing the actions of these everyday workers while he was on his break. When he was interrupted by a man standing behind him he knew all too well. The hero smiled. Hello, Bafway. The hero didn't move an inch from his seat. Welcome. I believe you go by the name Dr. Cusino now, don't you? Dr. Cusino slowly stepped forward. The two were mere feet away from each other. Yes, I must say I was rather surprised to see you here. I didn't expect you to so seamlessly override the Hero Association's database and bypass my security system. Dr. Cusino smirked. You might have a keen eye for robotics, but data encryption has never been your strong suit, brother. Bafway swung his chair around and stared at Dr. Cusino with a sense of curiosity and amusement. It's been too long, little brother. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 3. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.